Welcome to Echoes of My Imagination. My name is Tracy Lee. Sit back, relax. Let me tell you a story. Tonight's telling is not of one story, but several. Old Bardic threads gather together, the way fires are banked for the night. The stories are meant to wash over you, to give your mind something beautiful to rest against. This is a compilation for listening, for resting, for remembering how it feels to be held by voice. Let's get into it. The Lantern Keeper. Some lives do not burn, they glow. This was one. He was born in the month of lanterns, a time when an entire region hung floating lights for 3 nights to honor the souls of the departed. His first breath came just as the first lantern rose into the fog-draped air. They named him Tomeo, meaning keeper of dusk. His mother was a tea merchant. His father, blind since youth, was the temple's caretaker. His older sister died 1 year before he was born. They said she came back as his glow. Tomeo was different. By age 5, he could predict when a lantern would go out, down to the minute. By 6, he began to talk to them. To others, they were wax and paper. To him, they were memories that hovered in the dark, warm with the things unspoken. He walked alleys, collecting broken lanterns, fixing each one, whispering to their wick before relighting them. He kept them in his room, over 50, all floating with soft glows, pulsing like a second heartbeat. When he was 10, he was sent to the Temple of Second Light, where monks trained lightseers, those who could navigate darkness by attuning to emotional residue and flame. Tomeo learned how different oils shaped memory recall, how wick length changed mood, that each lantern, once lit by grief, retained its sorrow, that some lanterns, once broken, glowed stronger, but only for the one who wept into it. By 13, he could relight any extinguished memory if given the lantern that held it. He didn't speak much, but his presence brought peace. Even the elders stood still when he entered a room. At 15, Tomeo began to walk, lantern by lantern, town by town. He did not preach, he did not ask. He simply lit his lantern and sat. People gathered. Some cried, some remembered, some saw visions. He left behind lanterns that burned for years without fuel. One flickered only when someone lied. Another turned blue when a widow passed. In a flooded village, he hung a lantern in the tallest tree. Its light never reflected in the water. They say it held the memory of the dry earth. When he turned 28, Tomeo returned to the temple. He asked to see the first lantern, a relic said to contain the last memory of a forgotten civilization, sealed for fear of what it would reveal. No one had lit it in 6 centuries, but Tomeo did. It didn't flare, it whispered, and every monk in the temple knelt, weeping. The next day he vanished. The first lantern remains lit to this day, but only glows when someone asks for forgiveness. Tomeo was seen one last time in a valley where stars never shone. He walked through mist, lanterns circling him like fireflies. He placed one at the center of the darkness and whispered, "You are seen." Light bloomed where none had ever been, and then he was gone. But sometimes, travelers who are truly lost, emotionally, not just geographically, find a floating lantern at their feet, already lit. They say if you follow it, you'll find the memory you need, not the one you want. The Ember Child of Zaharan Grove, where flame did not consume but recall, and in the bark of ancient trees she read the memories of fire. Let's get into it. Hidden deep within the folds of the southern crescent continent, Zaharan was no ordinary forest. Its trees bore bark of coppery gold, slick with resin that shimmered faintly in moonlight. The leaves pulsed slightly in rhythm with the earth's magnetic breath. Fire here was not feared. It was sacred. Every decade the grove would burn, but not die. The trees lit with blue-orange flame, their bark singing in harmonics while the leaves turned to ash, and then reformed in spirals, always more complex than before. To outsiders, it was a myth. To the Zaharan bloodline, it was life. She was born in the heart of the grove during the burn season, her mother laying her gently onto cooled ash still warm with residual energy. She did not cry, she cooed, and the ash rose around her like a vortex of light. The elders called her Ember Child, the first in 2 centuries born during ignition. Her eyes bore spiral patterns that shimmered in darkness. It was said she would not just remember her own past lives, but the grove's. She slept in a cradle of bark and silk moss. Her lullabies were the wind moving through hollow branches tuned like flutes. Her toys were embers caught in slow burn crystals that flickered when she laughed. By the time she was 4, she could name the past 7 flame cycles in order. By 6, she walked barefoot across coals, whispering the names of trees long fallen, but not forgotten. She could touch a scorched stone and tell you what ritual had been held upon it 5 lifetimes ago. She heard stories from cinders. The elders taught her to be cautious, but she was never afraid of fire, only silence. At 12, she was given her right, a solitary night in the hollow flame, an ancient chamber deep within a petrified trunk, still warm with buried glow. She fasted, entered, and waited. The flame appeared not outside her, but within, dancing across her ribs like a second heartbeat. She emerged before dawn, with ash covering her hands and glowing breath on her lips. From then on, her skin held warmth even in snow. Birds nested near her fire-ringed presence. She was a lighthouse soul, one who did not seek light, but became it when others forgot their way. She tended ember pools with prayer songs. She relit sacred trees when their flame memory began to fade. She spoke to wandering seekers who entered the grove asking to burn away guilt, trauma, illusion. She didn't chase them. She taught them how to ignite what remained. Every full moon, she led a dance of rekindling, where villagers moved barefoot through glowing rings and told their worst truths out loud, only to watch the ash rise like petals carrying the weight away. At age 33, a blight came, not of nature, but of machine. Harvesters, strip diggers, soundless drones. The grove began to dim. She stood between metal and root alone, and when the first blades breached the outer ring, she ignited, not in death, but memory. Every tree lit in tandem, every animal sang, and the machines melted into silence. She vanished into ash, swirling skyward, becoming part of the grove's harmonic pulse. They say now if you step into Zaharan with true questions in your chest, you'll hear a voice in the embers, and it always knows your name. The Weaver of the Deep, where thread and time knotted in secret caverns, and a quiet hand stitched the very seams of fate. Let's get into it. In the underbelly of the continent, deeper than minds dared and darker than absence itself, lay a hollow no map could hold, hollow stone deep. It was not a single cavern, but a weave of chambers, each carved not by pick or quake, but by something older, something alive. Walls shimmered with mica and memory. Runes emerged in stone when no one watched. Time itself slowed here. folding softly like a garment left to rest. And there, in the smallest hollow of them all, lived the weaver. She had no name anyone could remember, only a spindle made of bone and a lamp that never ran dry. She wasn't born in the deep, she fell into it. As a child from the mountain village of Delancre, she chased a fallen star through the forest, wandered too far, and stepped into a sinkhole veiled in moonlight. She was 6. She did not scream, she listened. The deep did not echo, it whispered, it welcomed her. Roots offered her food, dripping quartz gave her drink. The walls hummed lullabies no surface-born tongue could sing. And when she found the spindle, already turning on its own beside the lamp, she placed her fingers upon it and remembered everything. Not just her life, but all the lives that had ever passed through Hollowstone. She stayed. She did not weave garments, she wove moments. Each thread spun by her spindle was not fiber, but memory, possibility, or choice. Some days, she wove the moment a soldier lowered his blade instead of striking, a chance glance between two strangers that would one day become a lineage, a gust of wind that blew open a journal, revealing a secret that saved a village. She wove these things not from power, but from permission. The deep only allowed what served balance. Her tapestries hung from stone hooks and shimmered like auras, woven timelines alive with motion, branching and resolving. Some were bright, others throbbed with sorrow. All were necessary. Very few found her. Those who did came not by walking, but by falling, through dreams, grief, trance, or fate's silent fracture. They arrived confused, barefoot, and wordless. She would wrap them in moss-threaded robes, place a thread in their palm, and let them see what they had forgotten. A mother's lullaby they never remembered hearing. A decision their great-grandfather made that led to their birth. The secret pain of an enemy now revealed in compassion. Most wept. She never spoke, but they always understood. One day, the deep trembled, not from collapse, but from a rift in the greater tapestry. The jagged thread appeared in her work, a snarl of noise and forgetting. It threatened to unravel every woven fate. She set aside her spindle and followed it, down, deeper than she had ever gone, into a vault of unwoven threads. There she found it, a thread that refused to hold shape. It pulsed with chaos, flickering between war, plague, silence, and hunger. And at its heart was a name, hers. She had become too much a part of the weave. The deep had warned her, weavers must remain unwritten. But her time had bent the rules, so she did the only thing she could do. She unwove herself, gently, completely. She pulled her thread free, wrapped it in silk thought, and sealed it inside the lamp that had lit her whole life. The spindle stilled, the lamp dimmed, the cavern sighed, and time resumed its breathing. No one weaves in Hollowstone now, but sometimes wanderers who fall too far find a chamber where mica shimmers like starlight and a soft lamp flickers just once. In that moment, they remember something they hadn't known they'd forgotten, a feeling, a voice, a thread. The Storm Speaker. He was born during a lightning storm that cracked the sky into a dozen mirrored shards. Let's get into it. The first sound he heard was thunder, not the gentle rolling kind, but the sharp, splitting judgment of the sky. His mother gave birth outside under a wide-brimmed canopy of ironwood trees, as the rain soaked the ground into sacred mud. She had dreamt of this moment, not the pain, but the flash. She called him Riven. The midwife gasped when lightning struck the stone just 3 feet from his cradle. A spiral burn appeared in the rock. Riven did not cry. He blinked once and then reached toward the sky. From his earliest moments, Riven did not behave like the other children. He laughed during thunderstorms. He hummed when the winds howled. He pointed to clouds and said strange words no one taught him. His people were desert folk, wind shelter builders and clay binders. They did not speak of the sky. They spoke of sand and heat and surviving. But Riven was not born to survive. He was born to listen. By age 7, he began wandering during storms. He never got wet. He would return dry-eyed and humming with static in his hair. Animals followed him. Lightning bugs formed spirals around his feet. His father feared him. His mother adored him. His village watched him. No one touched him. At 12, he was struck by lightning. It happened in the eastern dunes. Witnesses said he had climbed a spire of redstone and stood with arms open. The bolt hit directly. He did not burn, did not collapse. He glowed. For 10 seconds he stood in a pillar of light. When he descended, his eyes had changed. One was now silver, the other deep blue. And when he spoke, the ground trembled. "The sky remembers me." He became a wanderer, not because he was exiled, but because he couldn't stay. Wherever he went, weather shifted, droughts ended, rivers found new beds, winds carried secrets to his ears. He began speaking at village fires. "You must plant the seeds deeper. This river will flood within 2 moons. Build your doors on the southern wall." No one questioned him because he was never wrong. But Riven was not a prophet. He was a translator. He did not speak for gods. He spoke for currents. He would press his ear to stone and say, "The pressure is rising." He would taste the wind and say, "There is sorrow in the north." And sometimes he would disappear into the mountains for weeks. When he returned, he would speak in verses. "The sky does not punish. The sky reflects. You cannot lie to a storm." He never took a partner, but he loved. He fell in love with a thunder drum maker from the cliffside city of Tor Vesta. Her name was Kayla. She crafted instruments from silver wood and storm-stretched hide. They would sit together in silence, watching cloud fronts crawl over the horizon. They stayed together for 6 years. She died during a sonic avalanche, a resonance quake caused by a mine collapse. Riven heard it from 400 miles away. He fell to his knees. The sky turned black for 2 days. He did not weep, but he did not speak again for an entire year. In his later years, he returned to the redstone spire, the one where lightning had first touched him. He sat at its base and sang, not words, tones, vibrations. And the storms answered. Lightning began to fall in spirals. Winds began to form concentric circles. Travelers came to see him, to learn, to feel. They began to call him the storm speaker. He wrote nothing down, but his words lived in the bones of the cliffs. He died during a clear sky, no clouds, no wind. The moment he stopped breathing, the sky cracked, one bolt straight down. It struck the exact center of the redstone spire. The rock turned to crystal. Inside it, a spiral flame. At its heart, a tiny etching appeared as he passed into the sky that had always known him. I was never the storm. I was the silence it left behind. The Caravan of Companions, Lifetime of Noah. This story takes place along the Silk Road, circa 936 AD. Let's get into it. He was born in a dusty village near the mountains of Samarkand, where the air was warm and dry, and the wind carried the scent of cumin, myrrh, and horse sweat. His mother had sung lullabies in a language only she remembered, and Noah had picked up the melodies before he learned to walk. People said he was born smiling, the kind of child who laughed when goats sneezed, and cried only when no one around him needed cheering up. He wasn't rich, not in coin, but from the moment he could hold rhythm, Noah had a small lap harp slung to his back and a caravan of misfits following behind. A one-eyed camel named Tika, who refused to kneel for anyone but him. A silver-feathered parrot named Milo, who recited jokes in 5 dialects. A desert fox named Taj, who slept curled in Noah's scarf at night. And later, a spirited dog named Domino, white paws, black body, and eyes that never left Noah's back. Noah lived in motion. He traveled from Persia to the edge of Mongolia, weaving through oases, bazaars, and mountain passes like a bright thread stitching continents together. He was more than a musician. He felt people. The woman in the spice tent grieving her son, the merchant who hadn't laughed since the snows came, the little girl hiding behind her father's robes. He played his harp not for applause, but for peace, for connection, for joy. And somehow it worked. People said his music could calm an angry storm, or at least make you forget you were soaked. Each night, he camped beside his animals. Tika the camel would curl her long neck to nuzzle his hair. Taj hunted and brought him small lizard-like gifts. Milo the parrot perched on the harp and harmonized, mostly off-key. But it was Domino who was his mirror, the soul anchor. The dog had come to him during a sandstorm outside of Kabul, wild-eyed and terrified. Noah simply sat down, played one soft note, and Domino walked to him like it had been decided lifetimes ago. They were inseparable after that. Noah never married, not because love never came, but because he believed love was in every moment, in every shared meal, in every caravan song sung by a dozen accents, in every time someone said, "Stay another night, please," and he did. He passed away under a tapestry of stars, nestled between Tika and Domino, with Milo muttering his favorite line from an old joke. "Why did the merchant dance in the storm? Because he finally had rhythm." He was 78, and for 3 days the caravan did not move. The animals paced, the traders wept, the wind stilled. And in the village square of the next town, a little girl began playing a handmade lap harp, carved by her father after a storyteller passed through. The Flamebound Twin. They were born at the exact same second, 2 cries, 1 beat, like a pulse splitting into rhythm. Let's get into it. Their mother, a healer priestess, gasped not from pain but recognition of the same fire that they carried. The midwives wrapped the infants in mirrored cloth, one in crimson, one in cobalt. They named them Ka'il and Noé. Ka'il for flame of dawn, and Noé for flame of dusk. One kicked like lightning, the other opened his eyes wide and calm. From the moment they arrived, they were 2 halves of the same presence. They grew, not as individuals, but as echoes. Kael ran before he walked. He leapt from rooftop edges into water bowls with laughing abandon. Noé sat under trees with animals curled at his feet, eyes closed, tracking the flight of birds. They felt each other's emotions like echoes. When one cried, the other winced. When one laughed, the other turned their head in that direction. But they were not the same. Kael was fire in motion. Noé was fire in stillness. Kael painted fire murals on city walls. Noé composed wind chimes tuned to planetary alignments. Together, they created harmony. Their adolescence was marked by divergence. Kael was chosen to join the city guardians, trained in leaping combat, arc fireblades, and defense of the realm. Noé was summoned by the Oracle Assembly to train as a scribe of flame, learning to read breath patterns in volcanic steam and the memory signatures held in bone. They separated for the first time. Kael to the cliffs, Noé to the caverns, and something broke. Not loudly, but like thread fraying. They stopped hearing each other in dreams. Kael's hands twitched with restless heat. Noé's skin grew cold like distant moonlight. They were becoming whole men, but they felt half. War came to their land. A signal flame erupted in the southern sky. The far cities fell. Kael's battalion was deployed to defend the Edge Rift Bridge. Noé was kept hidden. The oracle said his knowledge was more important than his body, but he disobeyed. Noé disguised himself and walked alone for 6 days, barefoot, through scorched fields, chanting a recall frequency only Kael would recognize. On the morning of the 7th day, as Kael stood on the bridge facing the incoming army, he turned his head and smiled. Noé stood on the opposite tower. The twin flames had reunited. They fought together, not like two warriors, but one. Kael struck with blade. Noé wielded sonic fields drawn from the tuning forks embedded in his robe. They weaved through enemy lines like wind and fire entwined. The opposing force broke not from wounds, but from witnessing them, something inhuman, divine, bound. But destiny burns brightest before it yields. A final bolt of Skyrfy, an ancient weapon activated by a desperate invoker, struck the tower. Kael pushed Noé. Noé tried to hold him. Kael fell into the light. Noé screamed, but the sound twisted into a harmonic loop that broke the clouds. When the smoke cleared, only one body remained. Noé buried Kael at the river where they had first skipped stones. He lit a spiral flame and whispered, "We were one flame in 2 lanterns. I will carry both now." He looked up at Kael's blade and reforged it into a tuning fork. He took his own robes and wove them into a banner hung across bridges. He began to walk from city to city, telling stories, sharing dances, lighting hearths. Years passed. Noé aged, but children whispered that they saw 2 men walking, one laughing like thunder, one humming like wind. When he passed, he left no tome, only a carved flame, and beneath it, "You are not alone, even when you are." And that's it for today. Thank you for joining me for Echoes of My Imagination. My name is Tracy Lee. Don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and follow, and I'll catch you next time.